Okay. So I'm just going to log in here and see if it's live on LinkedIn. It should be. I'm not sure if it actually starts on LinkedIn until it's the time, if that makes sense. We'll have a look. So I'm pressing click to join. Yep. Okay. So it's LinkedIn. Brilliant. So I've closed LinkedIn down because I don't want to be doing that. And we're good to go, I believe, buddy.
Cool.
I'm just going to check. Just want to check if there's if we can actually see people coming in, because there's I suppose there's no point us talking if people aren't quite here yet. But we're going to start pretty much at 2:00, and we'll see what happens in terms of how many people are here right now. Is able to tell us that? Right.
I'm sure there's lots of people. No
Okay. Well, let's just get started then, because sorry about the technical glitches. Both I and Josh are having some problems with technology, which is very amusing, because of course we all work with technology. Today, from hundreds of one-to-one conversations, sales audits, and deep analysis of billions of euros of active sales pipeline, we've learned that over 70% of EMEA sales leaders are actually sabotaging themselves for two reasons. One, they're misallocating resource, time, and budget, and getting distracted by omni-channel options, I suppose, getting distracted from what's actually effective. And on the second side of things, they're making the wrong sales tech and AI bets. They're not actually getting much ROI from those investments, and they're definitely not getting the transformational business advantage they were looking for, with over 70% of these projects failing completely. What that actually means is that sales leaders are not generating the revenue they need near term, and instead of getting a future competitive advantage from AI, they're actually falling behind the high performance sales orgs. Anyway, afternoon, I'm Alex. I'm a sales director in EMEA for Connect and Sell. I'm actually based in sunny Portugal, and I'm joined by Josh Smith, who's the CEO of CRO Connected, which is Europe's most senior revenue leadership community. Josh, what are sales leaders focused on this year from your perspective?
Sure. I guess nothing revolutionary in truth. I think except the kind of 6-letter word that we all tend to live and die by. The word is growth. I think the only genuine difference over the last few years is the deeper focus on profitability and sustainability, and the kind of industrialization of the components required to execute their plan at speed. And I think that kind of dovetails nicely into the next point, right, which is AI and where sales leaders can gain a competitive advantage through clever use of technology. But wildly complex, comes with inherent risks attached to compliance and cost and a bunch of other considerations. But Alex, enough for me riffing. I guess you have a pretty acute lens into what world-class sales leaders are doing right now to drive growth. What are you seeing?
Well, obviously, we learnt a huge amount, but interestingly, the primary learning is that strategy must come first. Tech won't save you from bad strategy. And there's one strategy that is outperforming all others today. Now, I don't pretend we have all the answers, but I think this is a quick and easy win for everyone. And the strategy is it's outbound, by the way. It's that simple. Later on, we're going to be sharing a turnkey solution that operationalizes this strategy in hours at no cost to you at all. Because I don't want this to be just sort of information. We're all drowning in data. There's a real need for action. It's not just sort of mental masturbation, because we're seeing sort of 70% of sales teams missing their targets. This solution, it's sort of plug and play. And it's what I would call a truly intelligent blend of AI and human labor.
And that's interesting because I've been quite the cynic of AI, at least with the solutions that I've been observing over late. So, a lot of tech for tech's sake.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I mean, this in 2024 there was a lot of experimentation and playtime with AI and technology. Well, we're through that now. That you can't waste time with that. It's all about business results now. You can't be wasting time on things that aren't actually getting you a competitive advantage near term and long term. So I mentioned that outbound is the sort of the channel, so to speak, that the sort of the strategy, channel, tactic, whatever you call it. It's something that's massively under leveraged. We all need more pipeline multiple and greater pipeline velocity because sales cycles are taking longer, win rates are typically lower, initial contract values are low, and the expansion side in the land and expand model, that's low in comparison to pre-pandemic sort of levels. But literally this year, growth is CEO's number one priority. And Gartner was saying that it's not since 2014 that growth has been such a priority for businesses. In tough economic times that we're in, outbound is critical. The fish aren't just jumping into your nets. You've actually got to go and hunt if you want to eat in 2025. Data-driven companies such as Slack and HubSpot, they've hired huge outbound teams. And a massive amount of their revenue is being declared coming from those channels and those teams. This is despite those guys being models of excellence in product-led growth, Slack, and inbound marketing, HubSpot. So high-performing sales organizations are heavy on sort of outbound selling. You're doing lots of different things in your go-to-market mix, but it's critical that you build a culture of outbound. So what I mean by that is top-of-funnel prospecting is critical. It's not about just letting your SDRs and BDRs do that, by the way. As you can see on the slide here, the majority, 85% of BDRs, according to SDR leaders of Europe, of EMEA, they actually missed their target in 2024. 85% of them. So it's critical that your account executives also are prospecting. It's probably blocked a little bit here, the screen, but the top 20% of AEs are actually self-sourcing 30% of their pipeline. By self-sourcing, they're probably their top AEs are probably self-sourcing 200% more than an average AE. They're also outbounding the mid and lower funnel. It's not just top of funnel. So when you have an opportunity, they're sort of reaching out to the wider decision-making unit and user group. What's that? That results in 9 times faster sales velocity. That is an incredible uplift. So if your AEs aren't outbounding at all, they're missing out on sort of 30% of pipeline. And if they aren't outbounding sort of mid and lower funnel, their deals are going to be 9 times slower. What we also saw was that full cycle account executives are winning more deals, so a higher win rate, and they're having to discount less. And typically the average contract value is actually slightly higher. That's the starting contract. Generally speaking, outbound account executives, people who are outbound heavy and account executives carrying a quota, they're consistently 30% more revenue dense when they're building outbound into their process routinely.
Yeah, I think it's an acute observation. Like almost certainly the A's that you see that are the rainmakers, the top producers, they're typically the ones that are most disciplined. With going out and prospecting. But Alex, why then, in your opinion, is outbound so effective right now?
I mean, outbound is a very unsexy, route to market. There's product-led growth, there's ecosystem growth, there are so many options. But one of the critical things that outbound enables you to achieve is market coverage. And market coverage is such a quick and easy win, especially in sort of sales development, top of funnel. But apparently, according to Gartner, 40% of leaders haven't actually done a sufficient allocation to outbound to achieve this sort of moderate coverage that enables you to really capitalize on this. The genius of market coverage is you don't need to be the best seller. If you speak to enough people in the market, in your addressable market, you're going to identify those who are actively buying. I don't know if you come across Chet Holmes, but Chet Holmes talks about the 3% of the market who are buying now. They're in market. So by doing your outbound, you're going to pick up all of those people. But importantly, by doing sufficient outbound, more than the bare minimum, you're actually, unlike most of your competitors, by the way, because such a large proportion aren't doing this work. Unlike your competitors, you're going to also access this part, what I refer to as the blue ocean. blue ocean hunting. If you've read the book, it relates to that. So this is the 37% of the market that could buy from you in the near term that few of your competitors are actually engaging with. So by engaging with them before they enter their buying window, you're able to map out, okay, that company in 9 months' time, that's when they're making a decision on that. In 6 months, I want to engage with them. I've mapped out who the decision makers in that unit are, and I'm going to be able to influence their thinking before the competitors, my competitors, even know they're in the market. And that's going to give me a huge competitive advantage. I suppose for account executives, talking about mid-funnel and lower funnel engagement, it's less about market coverage when you're not prospecting. It's more about account domination. According to Gong and Cognism and those sort of guys, what you basically see is you're 5 to 7 times more likely to win an account when you engage with 4 people rather than 1 person. Because you might lose your champion. They leave the company and that's it. The deal's dead. So engaging with 4 people in a company rather than 1 increases your chance of winning that account by 5 to 7 times, depending which bit of data you look at. So it's a pretty profound uplift. Now, obviously, in enterprise selling, you might have 20 stakeholders, and 4 of those stakeholders might be consultants at McKinsey or a Forrester or something. So you need to be engaging with a far greater number of people at those big enterprise accounts. But it's really the same logic as market coverage. It's account coverage. So I suppose the other thing, Josh, that springs to mind about outbound is that it accelerates monetization of other channels. It's not just the best performing channel in its own right in terms of near-term revenue. So let me give you an example. You get an inbound inquiry from marketing. That really is just the start of an outbound motion. It's a trigger to do outbound. Because I bet the person making the inquiry, they're not the decision maker, they're not the budget holder. They're probably an end user or maybe an information gatherer, a junior person within the company. So you need to elevate the discussion to ultimately to the decision-making unit at some point. So the work of outbound is what I call buyer enablement. You're helping them make a decision in your favor. So you're following up on intent signals and you're actually doing the work that's necessary to convert that interest into a signed contract. Interestingly, something I was slightly surprised about is outbound generates more revenue from activating other channels, but what I would call indirect attribution, than it does direct attribution. And it's the best performing channel for direct attribution for over 55% of sales orgs in EMEA. So that is a really profound realization, I think. There is a business case, Josh, I would say, for even if you don't close any business by doing outbound, there's a business case for doing outbound to ensure all of your other tactical and strategic moves actually do generate ROI. So that event you're running, you want people to come to the event. Yeah, you've got to ring them up and go, hey, please come to the event. You're the outreach to them. And then after the event, to monetize their participation, again, you've got to engage with them. So outbound is critical, whatever strategies you're running. It coordinates and empowers everything.
Completely agree. And it's interesting. Last night I was literally on a call with Chris Beale and Jerry from your team, and we were just talking that outbound isn't just a place to follow up on intent; it's also a place to gather intent, right? Like the context that you collect, the insight that you gather about the market, really is the superpower. But without getting too distracted around that stuff for the moment, like with outbound always comes a very similar question. Like, is it all bound? Is there one channel that rules the roost? Like, where are you seeing people's money most productively spent, channel by channel? Like, where's the best bet?
Yeah, I've got a simple answer to that. The data is very, very clear. Not just the data from the billions of revenue we've been analyzing, but virtually everyone, by the way, all third-party research, everything agrees on this. And it's like the best, it's a known secret. Everyone knows this is true, but very few people are acting on it properly. Shall I tell you what it is? Live conversations. Live conversations truly matter. Outbound calling. The silent sales floor is killing sales effectiveness today. I think Josh, you and I were talking about this the other day, but outbound calling is still the most effective channel for most B2B businesses. And I think the stats that you had, it was something like 55%, were you saying?
Yeah, 55%.
55% of sales orgs. It's the most effective channel. But interestingly, outbound sales call volumes have gone down dramatically in the last 5 years.
And then I kind of wonder, does that not leave a bigger opportunity for you to, dominate a market, be more memorable, because
Yes,
theoretically it's less competitive?
And actually, not only less people competing on this channel, so it's easier to get a share of voice. But actually, in Europe, especially, there are new privacy regulations, and actually, what we're seeing is cold calling is safer and more scalable than cold email. So it's exponentially more effective than cold email, but it's actually more accessible in terms of the regulations and compliance. I suppose one of the things we were talking about just before we started, Josh, is why are sales conversations from outbound calling so important? Why is that the number one thing that people should be doing? Now, I'm a bit of a nerd, and I could talk about this for a very long time, so stop me if I'm boring people here. But ultimately, the buyer's experience with the seller is a huge factor in sales effectiveness. How you sell is why you win. I was fascinated to learn from the Yale research that's on the screen now that voice-only communication elicits greater empathy, emotional connection, and trust than even a video conference call like we're having now. So phone calls are more effective than a video conference at building trust. And trust really is the ultimate currency in sales. I mean, I would say if you look at the Salesforce state of sales reports, or any research really done over the last 5, 10, 20 years, every B2B buyer always says, I want to work with a trusted advisor. Oh, yes, I want to work consultatively with a trusted advisor. It's generally about 80% of B2B buyers state that it's an important factor when they're choosing their vendor. So live conversations, they're not just a way of sharing information. They actually induce brainwave synchronization. It's what neuroscientists call neurocoupling. And it also causes a release of hormones that impacts the emotional part of us and physical part of us. This is why phone-first sellers can help buyers overcome fear of messing up. It's a very emotional fear. FOMO, not FOMO, FOMO, fear of messing up. In a world where 60% of deals are lost to indecision, a buyer's inability to make a decision. If you've read The Jolt Effect by my friend Matt Dixon, who wrote The Challenger Sale, you'll know that 60% of deals are lost to this FOMO indecision factor. What we're seeing is that phone-first sellers that use the telephone more than average, they are actually 360% less likely to lose a deal to indecision. So 60% of deals are lost to indecision, but you can reduce the number of deals you're losing by 364% simply by doing a little bit more outbound calling. I think that's a huge thing. This research on the right, mentalizing. If you, by being phone first and having the conversations that matter, you're going to be 2.9 times more likely to hit your quota, because you're able to use mentalizing skills that you can't use in email or text message, or so that's a big thing as well.
Sorry, just to jump over that. What does that word mean?
Sorry, I'm a bit of a nerd. What it means is mentalizing is being better at the critical higher skills of sales EQ, emotional intelligence. So you're able to, in a live conversation, you're able to active listen. You're able to take a perspective. You're able to empathize with what someone's saying. You're able to help them make sense of the situation they're in. It's what neuroscientists call cognitive decoding. So you're able to help the buyer understand where they're at, understand their options, de-risk the process of making a decision. You can't value sell or build a business case for the cost of inaction, or build an accurate ROI model if you're hiding behind emails. You have to have a real conversation and get under the skin of the people you're speaking to, really understand their problems. And understanding is so critical. And having conversations, as you were saying earlier, you get that real feedback loop. Outbound calling isn't just about having more conversations for pipeline and things like that. It's about having better conversations where you learn more about the person that you're trying to serve. And as a result, you can genuinely help them much better.
Alex, we've just got a question. I think it's worth us actually addressing from somebody But I'll read it to you and then you can give it a stab because I think it makes a lot of sense to address. It says, can someone tell me about if they felt intent data dilutes and creates a red ocean for most B2B companies?
It's a great question, actually. I would say, I don't know if anyone else in the audience wants to chip in on this, but it's a very accurate point of view. Basically, what we see happening in the market is everyone goes to the same data brokers and gets all the same data. So I just bought direct dials and mobiles for the same people your competitor did. And then we're going to 6sense and we're getting the same intent signals from everyone. So basically, we're all going after the same people. It's a very small slice of the total addressable market. And that goes back to that market coverage point we were making. It's a huge strategic flaw because inevitably, if you're all going after the same people, then it's a hyper competitive environment. So you're not going to get as big a margin, are you? Because you're competing with all these other people. And the sales cycle is going to take longer because the buyer is going to have to test out all of your competitors as well. So yeah, I like that point. Intent data, I personally think, is one of the big cons. The best sort of market intelligence you're ever going to get is by having a one-to-one conversation with someone. They'll tell you things in a live conversation they would never put in writing in an email or on LinkedIn. And they'll tell you things that the intent data providers don't have. And it will be a competitive advantage because your competitor doesn't have that information. You alone uniquely have this information by doing the real work in selling of actually speaking to that person. It's, I think, a very clever point.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think, one of the conversation tracks we've had at CRO Connected about 12 months ago, presented actually by Jerry, was about the kind of flywheel of market domination, right? Which sort of said that, people come in and out of window for solution at various points. And the technology that you can leverage to find them points, isn't the most effective way of doing it. The point is you can have conversations at scale, collect context about them people, that will enable you to essentially be in the right position at the right time when them people are thinking about buying.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. I mean, one of the things people always say to me, and this is something we experienced during the research, is everyone goes, but we're already doing outbound calling. And the truth is, everyone is already doing outbound calling. Of course they are, but they're not doing it to the level they should be, given the return on investment, return on effort they would get from it. And potentially they're not doing it particularly well. And that's not a criticism. We're all guilty of this. The truth is, the fundamentals, they're very boring. Speaking to people on the telephone, cold calling, that is hard work. It's boring. It's much more fun to go and play with shiny new AI toys or build your brand on LinkedIn and do social selling. Of course it is. Sellers naturally avoid hard work. It's much easier to send 1,000 emails because it's so convenient to load up your email spam can and AI will automatically pseudo personalize it for you. That's easy. But in fairness, what we did discover is there are some real problems that are preventing people doing outbound calling effectively. What we see, Josh, is that the number of dials that you have to make to get through to a decision maker has gone up dramatically in the last 10 years. And even in the last 4 years, it's gone up dramatically. It's now, roughly speaking, to speak to a VP or above in a mid to large enterprise, it's about 32 dials you need to make to actually get through to have a live conversation with that person. What we're finding is my team, we multi-data source from 30 different sources, Cognizant, Zoom, Lucia, you name it, we're doing it, to source contact information, direct dials, mobiles, that kind of thing. We're only able to get maybe 10% direct dials and mobiles for the actual decision-making unit that we need to speak to. So in other words, 90% of the market, you have to ring the head office number. I want to speak to Bill Gates, so I'm going to ring the head office of Microsoft, and I'm going to speak to the gatekeeper and say, hello, can you please put me through to Bill Gates? And of course, they tell me to get in the queue, and it's a nightmare. And the reason it's a nightmare is there are so many layers of not just human navigation, gatekeepers and switchboards and PAs, but nowadays there's computer navigation to get through as well. Dial by name directory where you have to type in someone's name alphanumerically, phone trees, press 1 for accounting, press 2 for marketing, the one I hate the most, interactive voice response, where the computer says to you when you ring the number, the company you want to speak to, the computer says, who do you want to speak to? And you go, I want to speak to Bill Gates. Computer says, connecting you to Janet Jackson, and you just blow your brain out and you have to start the whole thing again. But I mean, there are some real barriers making it hard for people to use the phone. So I don't blame them for historically, not bothering with the phone, not seeing it is worth their time.
Yeah, I think the kind of idea is that prospects have essentially fallen behind a wall of technology,
Yep.
which has made it more complex. But that also twinned with the fact that you need more coverage, in the accounts that you're looking to win, right? The complexity is greater, the amount of people involved in decisioning is higher,
Yes.
which means you've got to get through to more people, right?
It's quite dramatic, actually. You're completely right. In most businesses, the number of decision makers involved has gone up dramatically. It's the democratization of decision making, but from a sales point of view, it makes it much harder because we have more stakeholders to engage. The other point, actually, I think, which came through some Salesforce research, is because people have been hiding behind email sequence spam cannons and social selling and all that kind of thing, for a number of years, during the pandemic. 85% of buyers are actually pretty unhappy with the phone experience they're getting from sellers. People have sort of forgotten how to use the telephone. So those are the challenges with using the phone. The good news, people, is that none of that is an excuse any longer. Rebecca Jenkins said we've got to use AI to move the needle, and she's completely right. But we have to use AI strategically to empower what is actually most effective. So we now know that outbound calling is what we should be doing. We know the problems that there are with outbound calling. And the good news is there's a revenue system that I'm happy to show you in things that I mentioned earlier. I showed you the results very briefly, that not only enables high-performing strategies we've been talking about, outbound and outbound calling, but it actually solves the problems that we were just discussing, Josh, in terms of the things that prevent people getting value from their outbound calling. It's pretty profound. Let me share some results with you here. So where are we? See if I can get up. So this is actually my own team, by the way. Are you guys able to see this? So basically, let me just put this onto super big so everyone can see. So this is 2 Fridays ago. I didn't choose last week because last week was Valentine's Day, and some of my team had better things to be doing than doing some outbound calling, which is completely fine. Everyone's allowed to have a life. But this is my team from 2 weeks ago. Friday, 2 weeks ago, typical day. What you'll see is that my team it only took, if you look down here where this arrow is, 4 minutes and 48 seconds. That's all it took for a member of my team on average to get into a live conversation with a named person at our target accounts. We're typically targeting VP and above at mid to large enterprise. So this is not just ringing a hotel receptionist. This is ringing a genuinely very hard to reach person in the traditional world. Well, my team are having 5.7 conversations effortlessly delivered to them per rep per hour. We're actually booking from cold calling. We're not calling our friends here. This is cold calling. We're getting 0.63 meetings per rep per hour booked for this, which is incredible return on effort. No other sales channel that I've been investigating as a sort of 15 years I've been a sales effectiveness researcher comes close to that. And by the way, these results aren't particularly exceptional. At the moment in Europe, there are only 77 companies that have the solution I'm using, that my team are using, deployed. Now, the average across these 77 companies is they're actually getting 7.9 conversations on average over the last 90 days per rep per hour. And they're booking 0.5 meetings per rep per hour. So my team having slightly less volume of conversations, but we're booking slightly more meetings. That might be because we're having slightly more strategic conversations. It's slightly longer. We're talking slightly longer. But these stats are incredible. Basically, these 77 companies in EMEA have saved 78,000 hours of labor. They've saved 78,000 hours of human labor as a result of using this AI-powered approach to enabling outbound calling. That equates to over 4 million. If we put that into euros, it's over 4 million euros they've saved in the last 90 days. And they've generated additional pipeline above their target of 10 million euros. So that really is. So my results that my team are getting are very much in keeping with everyone else that's using the same solution. It's very consistent. Here's a trial I actually ran for someone this week. So they've never really done much outbound calling, but they realized it was something they needed to do. It took about 2 hours to get these guys set up. Their list is their strategy. We took the list they had, and this is what they experienced. They actually tested out 2 different modes, but on this mode enabled one person to do the work of 9 people, call it, and this one enabled that one person to do the work of 16 people. They were 21 to 23 times faster to a conversation, and many days of work was being done during their trial. I mean, phenomenal acceleration and return on effort.
Alex, can I just nudge in for a second, because I
Of course,
assume a few people probably have a similar question to me in this sense. Is this just another AI dialer that I see time and time again at the moment?
That's a fair enough question. I'll be honest. First of all, it's not AI. It's not an AI dialer. Of course, we are using AI and automation. It's basically a patented system that blends human users and AI. So that's the way to look at it, I suppose. The truth is, no AI dialer, and my God, there are lots of them out there. They're everywhere, AI dialers. No AI dialer could have got 70% of the conversations that my team are getting. Because an AI dialer can only basically get you a live conversation if you're calling a direct dial or a mobile. And you can only source those for 10% of the people you're going after. The conversation weapon I shared with you just now, we're able to get conversations with up to 100% of the people we're speaking to, whether we have their direct dial or not. So it's a very big sort of philosophical difference. Now, I suppose the real difference is this is something, basically doing a dial doesn't take any time at all. Even if I do it manually on my phone, it only takes a few seconds. It doesn't take long at all. Where you waste time as someone doing outbound calling is not the dial time, so to speak. It's the management of the dial, but for everything from the dial to the moment that Bill Gates picks up the phone. That's where you waste hours of your life. Doing a dial, well, that took 3 seconds. So a dialer, it makes a dial very quickly, but it doesn't get you the conversation with Bill Gates. The only way you're going to get the conversation with Bill Gates is you're going to have to go through all of that computer navigation, phone trees and all that kind of stuff. Then you're going to have to speak to departmental PAs, maybe his personal assistant, a receptionist, a switchboard, and only then might you get transferred to Bill Gates' phone. So our approach, it actually solves the real underlying problem that people have here. And that's a really important realization. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so you guys can see this, because this is what's being removed here. This is what my team did on, I think it was last Friday or whatever it was, a couple of Fridays ago. My team, they didn't have to do 96.1% of the dial management that never resulted in speaking to Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, whoever you're actually going after, that hard-to-reach decision maker. So, because only 3.9% of the dials that the system made that were managed by real humans on their behalf actually got through. So, in other words, the 96.1%, that was just waste that was removed. I don't want my sellers, highly paid people, to be playing telephone operator. That is not selling. That is a minimum wage job. I don't want them doing that. I want them active selling time. With this approach, you're able to maximize your active selling time because the system, a combination of AI and human labor, is removing all of the non-selling time, which I think is utterly genius, in honesty. The other thing, different to an AI dialer again, I think this is worth explaining, is that was instant efficiency. What I was showing you here is instant efficiency. They press a button, a bit like Uber, and the conversation is delivered to them effortlessly. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't do anything other than have the conversation that matters. So that's instant efficiency. I can set you guys up with a trial, for free. You'll experience the same thing. But the really exciting bit is more effective. Basically, this is my team in February. We had a hypothesis that this particular list, this group of people was who we should go after. Slightly embarrassingly, we learned that it wasn't the right people to going after. It was a waste of our time. Because only 3% of the people we spoke to, of these 300 or whatever, 377 people, 3% converted into a meeting and revenue. And this is true across the board. Sales reps waste the vast majority of their time, up to 95% of their time, 99% of their time, working on accounts that aren't a good fit. We were able to correct this in rapid time. So instead of focusing on this list where we're only getting 3% conversion, I'm going to get my people to focus on all of these lists that are now on the screen. Instead of 3% conversion, everything on this list, every contact here on this list is converting at 10% or more, which is, in other words, it's converting at over double the average conversion point. So that's how we can become more effective. So one Alex, it gets the instant efficiency of doing the work of, let's say, 10 Alexes. That's due to the AI and so on, and the human labor being done for me. But now the AI is helping me identify where I should allocate my time. Where am I getting the best return on effort? So if I'm calling this list here, let's say here, there are 227 people. We've only spoken to 0.88% of them. So in other words, 260 people, and I'm getting a 50% conversion. So instead of 3% conversion, I'm getting 15 times more conversion. So if I'm 10 times as efficient, and then I'm increasing my effectiveness by 15 times, one Alex is now able to outcome the business impact of 150 Alexes. That is ridiculous. And it sounds so crazy that you probably won't believe me, but that is the reality we're talking about here. That's how big a competitive advantage it's giving me. I just wanted to illustrate this another way. So this is a company we've been working with, and basically they spent a huge amount of time and money reaching out to CIOs and CTOs of big organizations, enterprise level, in the first half of 2024, because they were launching a new service. And what they got back from all of that effort was nothing. They didn't really get any pipeline, and they got no attributable revenue. So what they learned is that their targeting hypothesis was wrong. They shouldn't be going after CTOs and CIOs. They should be going after these job titles. This is what we learned by doing experiments. And so we've enabled them very rapidly to refocus on where they're getting the best revenue density from their outbound calling. They're not just sitting there calling anyone randomly. It's like, no, there's real strategy behind this. Now, at the moment, they're 28 million in pipeline, and they've already billed 2 million of revenue closed. So it's a really exciting place to be. No AI dialer is enabling you to get these insights and to enable you to work this smart. Similarly, by the way, this is stop me if I'm boring people, by the way, Josh. So I'm a bit of a nerd. Basically, we use the conversation weapon, to enable us to work smarter in terms of how what messaging is working and the delivery of messaging. So we have a piece of AI that's analyzing every single conversation that my team are having. They might be having thousands of conversations a week. And it's able to identify to us where there are opportunities for each person to get smarter. And that's incredibly valuable. So again, it's helping us convert the conversations we're having more efficiently into business outcomes, whether that's a meeting booked for SDRs, whether that's a revenue build if you're actually if you're an account executive. And by the way, AI dialers, they didn't do any of this. The truth is, in my experience, the survey we did last year, 65% of B2B sales orgs in EMEA, they actually already have a form of dialer technology. So there's very little advantage competitively of having a dialer. It's either built into your CRM, or maybe you've bought a cheap robo dialer or parallel dialer, or it might be in SalesLoft or Outreach if you're using those tools. I'd be quite concerned, by the way, in terms of GDPR compliance and the new EU AI Act about using a robo AI dialer. I'm not a lawyer, so it's not legal advice, but I would say it's very risky. Basically, so 65% of people are using an AI dialer right now. But interestingly, Josh, as we were discussing earlier, 70% of sales orgs fail to hit their targets. So in other words, an AI dialer isn't really helping you hit your targets particularly, because everyone's already got one. What we're discussing here today, this breakthrough, the conversation weapon I use that I'm showing you, that only 77 companies in Europe are using, that the results that gets, it's nothing to do with an AI dialer. It's a completely different level. It's a game changer. I hate that phrase, but it really is.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we found some pretty interesting application, by the way, for how we used Connect and Sell, which I'm happy to share with people. A little deep dive now, but also independently, more than happy to speak to anybody. And I guess just one thing on what you're showing here, particularly Alex, the slide. I guess that in these conversations we tend to forget about the skill component of execution. Right. Yes. And this actually completely minimizes or narrows the window of time it takes people to get to high performance in execution, because it literally relays the coachable moments to help you better. But how we were using it, and I guess as a novel way you'll see this week on LinkedIn, I was using it on a golf course. For anybody who kind of equally believes in unstructured conversations anywhere, anytime. We took a bag of golf clubs out and tried to hit balls whilst making live conversations in real time. Definitely not how we use it every day. But what we did, you know, and for context, I had a team of
Josh,
2
with your
SDRs.
permission, I might just share that with people because it made me laugh.
Oh no!
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
mullered it.
Can they
He's
hear
mullered
that?
it to the right.
Oh no. Sorry, hi, Jerry here, calling with Connect and Sell. Yeah, hi James. Yeah, we've never met before. Just wondered if I could grab half a minute to share why I'm calling, please.
Got 26 seconds, so I can just tell you where I'm calling.
Oh, it's a great shot.
Sorry, that was a bit gratuitous, but it made me smile.
Yeah, and I was saying last night, I think the game of golf definitely, or I love the game more than it loves me, you know, but I definitely enjoyed the cold calling component of it, you know, high impact, full of adrenaline. But also, I think the interesting thing about going
Explain
out.
there, guys, by the way. So what that was, you know, Josh likes his golf, as does my colleague Jerry. They're using a mobile app of this service. So they're not stuck at their desk, you know, cold calling, outbound calling all day. They're able to go out and do what they enjoy. I take the dog for a walk and go and watch my daughter surfing. And I've got my little phone there and I'm able to effortlessly have conversations on demand. So I can be hyper productive anywhere. You know, a field sales team who are out and about and not desk based, it's amazing for those guys. Sorry to interrupt, Josh.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I think the point you touched on earlier around the kind of silent sales floor, you know, being detrimental. Like, this gave me a chance to actually go out and cold call next to somebody again and collect all of that osmosis, you know, that I would have had being live around other sellers once upon a time, where I could learn and develop through listening to live conversations happen. But just quickly back to the point around how we utilize Connect and Sell. Like, I have a team of 2 SDRs, so super small company. You know, and we were fundamentally able to do the job of about 20 people. You know, and these were inexperienced, you know, kind of white belt SDRs, if you like, non-traditional hires. That's a conversation for a separate day. But, you know, for a clue, one was my dad, who was a 60-year-old painter and decorator. And what we were able to do in a day per rep was have about 30 completed conversations with a live active prospect from our list every single day. But what we did slightly different was actually call with the intent to get permission to communicate with a prospect on a channel of their choice. So we were able to get massive validation of channel. So where we would follow up next, because the most important part about all of this, you know, is the follow up over time. We were able to understand and collect that context around, you know, where did prospects want us to engage with. And just some really interesting statistics. Like, we used to send cold email, like everybody probably is guilty of. Used to see open rates of 1%, you know, maybe at best 5%. But actually executing a conversation first and asking permission to do that, we saw open rates exceed 80%. 80% of our emails were not just getting into people's inboxes, they were actually getting opened. And what we did was kind of construct or manufacture a funnel of different landing pages with different resource that really spoke to the problems that we assumed people had in our market, our ICP. And based on their behavior inside of them funnels, we were obviously able to predict where we thought we could help them. And, you know, 3-step funnel, multiple emails, all of them emails, you know, achieving just wild open rates, 90% in email 1, about 60% email 2, even 40% by email 3. But the last step was call back. And this was fascinating. What we found was 56% of people that we actually called back agreed to book a meeting with us, you know, off the back of that process. You know, and because we're able to achieve relevance, right, we were able to actually understand, collect context, and be really relevant and meaningful. So for us, you know, this has been revolutionary with 2 people. You know, we've been able to just, you know, consistently build huge amounts of funnel and pipeline with CXOs in mostly enterprise organizations, you know, just by leveraging this and obviously building some skill.
So
You know,
those
components
2
around it.
people, Josh, if let's say you were to have to hire to do the same amount of work, how much sort of output are you getting in terms of labor equivalents? You know, would you say the 2 people are doing the work of 10 people between them, or 20 people, or 30 people? How productive are they?
Well, from what I've seen in terms of data, the average SDR has about 4 or 5 conversations a day.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying at hours we're having 30, that's 6x per person. So for 2 people, we were producing the output essentially of 12 people.
Very nice. Okay. But I just brought this up because weirdly, I've been doing some research on the same thing. I haven't looked at it in quite the same way as you, but basically I analyzed my outbound email that I was doing. So in the whole of 2024, I sent 817 emails. So I personally am using email. I'm using LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm doing all these things, aren't we all? But as a result of being phone first, the average in 2024 for B2B, I don't know if you were aware of this, Josh, for Belkin's research, the average open rate is only 27.7. So you were saying you were getting, over 80% all the time. That's very much what I was getting, by the way. I got 89% open rate. And it's not because I'm amazing at email. It's not like I'm tricking them with email subject lines. It's literally being phone first. So I'm getting 8 times higher reply rate. That's probably more important to me. I'm getting 41% of people I email replying to me. That's amazing.
Yeah. And Alex, I'm just going to say, I'm assuming you probably got some statistics to prove my next claim here, but it's not just email, right? It's website lookups, it's LinkedIn followers, it's, everything else that you do and exist on in the digital world will see massive radical increase as a result of all of this stuff.
It's quite difficult to measure for LinkedIn, but yes, I have to be honest. I've been on LinkedIn since 2008. I have to be honest. My wife would say I'm addicted to it, and I can't really attribute a lot of revenue to LinkedIn. I can attribute hundreds of millions of revenue in my own time to direct calling people. Absolutely, face to face, yeah. Email, yeah. LinkedIn, dark social is quite difficult to attribute, but certainly I see more engagement on LinkedIn when I activate it with a phone touch. In fact, there isn't any activity that we have measured where you don't increase the speed to value, the time to value, and increase the impact by adding a phone touch. So if you're running an event, make sure you ring those people so they come to the event. After the event, ring them to follow up and hopefully monetize them. If you're running a large advertising campaign, make sure, weirdly, it goes to your point about websites. I personally think intent data that the guy mentioned earlier, that's a great con. Don't spend money on intent data. And for the love of God, stop your marketing department spending money on B2B advertising. That is, again, a complete waste of money. Big con. It's a real hustler game. If you want to have the most targeted advertising you can have in B2B, it's really simple. When you ring someone, about 70% of people you speak to on the phone, proper conversation, not they go, hey, I'm busy, I can't talk, but where you have a proper conversation, 70% of those people, they're going to go and visit your website. That is the most targeted and sort of advertising drive to website traffic there is. And that's one of the ways that outbound calling is activating all these other channels. I was saying that, let's say the majority of value from outbound calling is actually activating and monetizing the other channels. With email, it's really easy to measure. With websites, it's really easy to measure because they're digital, and it's with LinkedIn and sort of social and Instagram or whatever, TikTok, whatever you're using, that's quite tricky to measure. But it's huge. I would say that outbound calling should be partially funded by marketing because it has a bigger marketing benefit than sales. And yet, 55% of sales organizations today say outbound calling is their most effective channel for revenue in year. So it really has an omni-channel impact on everything. So it's, people are mad not to do more of it. And literally the thing we were sharing today that Josh and I both use, the conversation weapon, that's a turnkey solution. Originally, that was only available to big companies and it wasn't available compliantly in EMEA. Now, any company of any size can get up and running with the same system we're using in days for free. And I guarantee you're going to have more conversations, within a matter of minutes than you probably had in weeks. It is a profound change. And the truth is, if you could just get Bill Gates on a live call, would you bother all this omni-channel busyness? Would you bother writing that personalized email and playing on LinkedIn? Or would you just have the conversation that really matters? So it's it brings some sanity back to sales and honesty.
Yeah, completely agree. I think conversations are the thing that move the needle fundamentally. The context you collect is the superpower, but also the speed in which you can move. In a world where speed really matters, again, that gives you the edge. So, conversation first, be wise and collect context about your market to be the most informed in there, for sure. And move at pace. That would be the three things I've kind of taken from this.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. I mean, the one thing I would say is, time management is such a big thing in sales effectiveness. Probably only 25% of a salesperson's day is available for actually active selling. According to Salesforce's research of, I think it was 80,000 sellers they surveyed. So pretty large survey. So 75% of their day is lost to internal meetings and things that aren't going to generate you any revenue. So for that 25% of the day that they could be making you money, you want them focusing on what moves the needle most effectively, which is outbound calling. And you want them to do the outbound calling as efficiently and effectively as possible. So not using an AI dialer. I genuinely suggest you check out this conversation weapon. It's actually quite good fun. And I know that sounds crazy considering it's ultimately cold calling. But to your point, Josh, to summarize, if you want to achieve alpha, that sort of maximum return on investment. So if a sales director acts like an investment manager with a portfolio, you need to reallocate your investments weight it more heavily to outbound and specifically to outbound calling. You can't just have your SDRs doing this, remember? Full cycle account executives who are self-prospecting and calling lower down the funnel, they are critical to you hitting your sales targets. And when adopting sales tech and AI and all that sort of stuff, you need to make sure that you're adopting sales tech that actually makes what works, what's effective, outbound calling, more effective. Not one of the saddest mistakes I see at the moment people making is they adopt sales tech that's good at making things efficient. So they adopt something that, let's say, helps with email automation and that sort of stuff. But that is a fundamentally failing channel. So all you're doing is, in English, we would call it polishing a turd. You're making more effective something that is actually a failure. So it's like it can never actually make you much more money. So you've got to focus on applying technology of AI and automation to the levers that are strategically most important. I hope this was useful, everyone. And by the way, if anyone wants to come and join Josh and Jerry on their sort of golf and call outings, it looks quite good fun. I actually live in Portugal, so I won't be able to make that one. Maybe we'll have an event in Portugal one day. Got lots of golf courses down here.
Maybe we should. Yeah, I was just going to say I'm seeing Paul Brooks in the audience. So I'm sure Paul, you'll be up.
Very cool. And similarly, if anyone wants to try this out, I can get you set up in under a couple of hours for free. So you guys can have an internal case study, try it out in your world with your reps, with your list, and see if it might also be a game changer for you. Now, we've had lots and lots of questions coming in through the various channels, and I'm very amateur at managing the technology. So are there any sort of pressing questions that people would like to ask, or any comments you'd like to make, or any feedback, I suppose? And happy to help in any way we can.
I can just see one that might be worth you addressing, Alex, actually around the data component for this. So like you said that you use a blend of different data sources, for your outbound activity. Like, is that something you provide the customers with as part of this, or do they go out and get their own data? I'm only relaying that because someone's asked the question.
Well, I would say ultimately we become a managed service, like a wraparound, because our clients want to get the business outcome. They've got to hit their target by X date, etc. So, yes, we're end to end, and we'll help you wherever you want. So, if you say to me, Alex, we haven't got any data, our attitude is cool. We'll go and build that list for you. We'll pull the data from 30 different sources. But generally what we start by is we take a feed from your Salesforce. That would be the gospel of truth, your existing CRM data. That can be pulled in with one click. We multi-data and enrich it with one click. And by the way, that's not just enriching with data, with contact data. It's enriching with numbers that we uniquely know actually result in a conversation. So we call it better numbers. It's really important that it's not just having a telephone number. To give you an idea, like this is my mobile phone. If anyone calls this, I'm not picking up to you because I only pick it up to my wife or my children's school. So I think that's quite important. Data actually is a bit of a red herring, I think, nowadays, because even if you have the best data team in the world, you're never going to be able to source more than 10, 20% direct dials and mobiles for the people you want to speak to. So in other words, to speak to all of the people you need to speak to be as revenue dense and efficient as possible, you can't limit yourself to only going after direct dials and mobiles. And that's where this conversation weapon is amazing, because irrelevant of what data you do or don't have, it's going to deliver you a conversation, a real live conversation with that named decision maker. On average, you're talking under 6 minutes, anywhere in EMEA, on demand. Press the button like Uber, 6 minutes later, Mr. Gates, sorry to interrupt, do you have a moment? And that's irrelevant to the data you have. So although we help companies with data, because data is important, this solution removes the problem of data. It just means you can have the conversations you want irrelevant of what data you have, which I think is incredible. Because data's been a big problem my whole career, really, and now it's not.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm seeing more comments about, is the recording going to be available for replay and stuff like that.
I'm not quite sure how LinkedIn does it, but I think it stays on LinkedIn and you guys will be able to watch it again through LinkedIn and things. If you found it useful, please do share it with your colleagues and your network and all that sort of stuff. I'm told that's best practice in social selling, so I should do that. And you never know. I was saying to Josh earlier, like I could basically have got nothing from LinkedIn in my whole career. I've been using it since 2008. And I'm pretty much addicted and use it quite heavily. If any of you want to prove me wrong and sort of go, Alex, we'd love to sign up for a big contract with you, then I can kind of go back to my team and go, you know what, I actually got some business through LinkedIn. I'm not holding my breath, but that would be quite funny if that happened. I think we've come to a natural conclusion, really, Josh. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing the insights from your community. CRO Connected is a genuinely interesting community. It's not. I don't want to badmouth anyone particular, but it's not like Pavilion. This is senior revenue leaders coming together and having frank and honest and open conversations about things they're struggling with, things they've discovered, and genuinely trying to help each other. It's a community I'm actually really proud to be a part of. So glad you could join us today, Josh. And if anyone's interested in that, they should reach out to Josh. I highly advise you do.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, Alex. And always good to spend time with you, mate.
Nice one. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and a great weekend.